You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Welcome to WCAT TV and Radio. I'm Kiki Latimer. I'm your host for the Catholic Bookworm. And I have with me today Michael Brinda, who's written a very, very interesting book on parish management called Parish Management and Operations, The Buck Stops Here. Love the sound of that.
Thank you.
So welcome.
Thank you.
How would you like to start us off with a prayer?
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord, we're gathered here on this Zoom call. Please open our hearts and our minds to be receptive to whatever the Lord has planned for us to reveal during this interview process. And let it travel, especially let it travel to where it needs to go around the world, and let it enter the hearts and minds of others. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So I've just finished reading Mike's book. I loved it. I thought it was very interesting. Not the kind of book I would normally be drawn to reading, even though I do a lot of leadership sort of things in my life. So it was interesting for me to see ideas and techniques that I've just naturally used in my life sort of be spelled out. So tell us how you got into this a little bit.
Originally I could back it up to 96 when I went to Cursillo. And of course, that's when the trajectory of my life changed. And I went from being more self-focused to more service-focused, and specifically service of God. And in that journey, I ended up as the volunteer but full-time parish business manager at St. John the Baptist Catholic Church and Parish in Costa Mesa, California. That exposed me to the need for this book, but I didn't write it at that time. And then you fast forward to my attending Holy Apostles College and Seminary, and I was able to realize there that this course I had in my mind, it should be taught, a course in parish management that was unlike other courses being taught really under the same or similar title. And in teaching that course, I was using 3 other books that were not mine, trying to piece together what I wanted to say, but I still wasn't satisfied. And I knew then I just had to write my own book. And so that's what I did. I wrote my own book and I use it in teaching this class.
That's how I wound up writing my homily book. It's like, I can put this together better.
Exactly. Right. And I would say back to your comment that, you weren't naturally inclined to this type of book. Part of that, I think, is that the title itself, somebody can look at the title of this book, Parish Management and Operations, and say, well, I got that handled. Or, well, I don't do that. I don't need that. And in reality, I had to choose that title because that's my target audience. However, you could change the word parish to business, and this book could be called Business Management and Operations. You could change it to government, and it would be called Government Management. And you could change it to military, and it would be Military Management and Operations. I titled it the way I did because the audience that I want to read this book wouldn't read it if it had any of those other names. Right. And in reality, when you read it, and it talks about parish, you could change it to company and business because the principles that apply are portable. So combining my education in Holy Apostles also allowed me to seed concepts properly for an ordained or a lay ministry audience. And that's also important. So the book resonates with that particular audience.
So one of the things you addressed in the book, which I found interesting, was, there's this immediate objection. Well, the church is not a business. We're reaching out to people for evangelization, for salvation, and that's not a business. And I found it fascinating that you say, well, yeah, it's not a business, but that doesn't mean you can't take good business principles and apply them to how you do your parish operations. And I think you want to talk about that confusion a little bit.
That's very true. It is important, and the confusion is the right word, because depending on the audience and whether it's a lay audience I'm teaching or seminarians, there's significant pushback to the concept that business in any way, shape, or form touches inside the church, and more specifically that a man who chooses to enter the seminary to become a priest wants anything to do with the priest, with business within their priesthood. They don't, many of them. Some get it. Some realize that within a parish, you have principles that will apply that we can transfer from business, but some don't. And it is necessary. And if anybody would just relax and not have any initial bias, they would realize that within a parish, we have vendors, we have hiring, we have employee turnover, we have potential for litigation, and most importantly, the center of evangelization, the tip of the spear, is within the parish. And you can't just say, well, it's everybody's job. That doesn't work. It's specific. No, it does not work. The idea of evangelization and outreach within a parish falls under the purview of the parish business side, in the sense, not in the spiritual sense at all, but in organization and meetings and creation of ideas and formulation of strategy. These types of events have to be coordinated somewhere and by somebody. And at the top of the parish org chart, of course, is the pastor. And then we have parochial vicars. And then we have lay volunteers. But where does the outreach and evangelization originate from? Who's responsible for that? Who's going to oversee that on a day-to-day basis? Not the big picture, which is the pastor, but that all has to be somewhere, and somebody has to be responsible for that. And that is an integral part of what I explain in the book. That lands inside of this notion of parish business management and operations.
So one thing that you mentioned that I was sort of looking for, and you sort of bump into it around page, I think it was 121, 22, was the idea of what happens, because I think a lot of parishes struggle with this. What happens when the pastor is not on board? Let's say the pastor is not a leader. He's not necessarily, and you distinguish this idea between, that you can create a good administrator, you can teach people administrative skills, but leaders are born. And I completely agree with that. You can certainly enhance your leadership abilities, but leadership is a gift. What happens when your parish priest, who's, sort of running the show, is not a leader? I've run into a lot of priests. They're not necessarily a leader. They're not really people persons. They're sometimes themselves wondering, like, how did I get myself into this? How can you bypass that? Are we sort of stuck in clericalism that we just have to, the ordained guy is, the buck stops there? What do we do with that?
What happens is what you see in most parishes, which is a very static operation. What you see on the website or what you read in the bulletin is all that parish offers to their local community. And there's nobody in charge of discussing expansion of those programs. You cannot, just strictly speaking, in canon law, you can't go around the pastor. It is what it is. But you can help by explaining and showing examples and passing them information that's contained within this book. You can help them understand a wider picture of their duties and responsibilities. And you can explain the concepts of delegation and how we're not trying to add more to your plate, but if you find qualified people, you can delegate some of these issues. And to be very specific, just go, comparing apples to apples, just go to the Protestant churches' websites in a community where there's a Catholic parish and look at the various outreach ministries that they offer and compare and contrast that to what the Catholic parish offers, and look at it from a just a necessary point of view. Why is it that the Protestant Church offers a divorce recovery group and our own Catholic parish does not? Are we trying to say that there are no divorced people in the area? Of course not. That's ridiculous. And you can go down the list, and you can go from the very obvious, such as the divorce idea, to something that's geographic specific, such as a surf Bible study. You meet at the beach, you have a Bible study, and then you all go surfing, and it's on a weekly basis. Well, if you're not near the ocean, you can't have a surf Bible study, but I bet you can figure out something that's not that generically cast and will attract people that have fallen away or lapsed or have no faith.
I think historically speaking, the Protestant church has been, we always call it much more horizontal. Catholics are that vertical. It's me and God.
Yes. Yes.
Don't really want to shake hands with the person next to me. I'm a convert to Catholicism, so I certainly saw the difference coming from a Protestant background into Catholicism.
And I don't want to be misunderstood to cast this as some sort of competition. I'm just using this as an easy way to show what we should do that we are not doing. It's right there. It's right in front of us. And if we had a meeting with the pastor, we could get into that type of discussion and hopefully, prayerfully, with love, not accusing anybody of any failures, but just illustrating the potential that we have for outreach and evangelization. And it's all parish centered, but we need somebody to take charge of that in a parish.
It's hard to find people that will step up to leadership. That's been my experience. Now I'm quote, the leader of church decorating at a very small parish. So I have a crew under me, and they've learned when Kiki says jump, they all jump, and they're wonderful. And so we have a beautifully decorated church because there's leadership. Now my background is speech communication. So I've been trying to push to get a lecturing program going, again, so that there's some guidelines for what you call a superior service, like really superior things happening at the altar and when people speak. So here's something I've run into, and I want to ask you about it. I have found that people confuse humility, what you call mediocrity, and I call mediocrity, they think is humility.
Yes.
And what we would call superior service and get out there and do, the buck stops here and let's get the work done and let's do it great and do it right. People think is arrogance.
Yes.
And so I've run into that, like getting people to get up there and not read the readings, but proclaim the readings. And the attitude is, I can't do that with humility. And it's like, So let's discuss how you've run into that, because I'm sure you have.
Yes. And your characterization is correct. People will label you a loose cannon. They will put various labels on you, arrogant, rude, etc. But it comes down to talking to them in charity and love. But nevertheless, the absolute rule is speak truth to power. And I have to say what I need to say if I'm going to actually do anything in the realm of leadership. I'm not responsible, though, for how people receive it. I can't be responsible for how they want to characterize me, either to my face or behind my back. I have a duty to do, which is in this example, to provide lectors for Mass or whatever the case may be. And I'm going to read the room, so to speak. If I am a leader, I'm going to read the room and try and understand the temperament of the people I'm talking to. And I have to adjust what I say and how I say it to try and align myself with the person that I'm speaking with. And I realize I might have to use more words and a specific body language. And I can't get to the point directly, which I wish I could, with this particular person. I know it's a longer road with them, and it's going to take a lot more work to educate them or persuade them. Somebody else, I can just say, hey, Joe, I need you to do such and such. And they're like, I'm on it, whatever you need. Okay, fine. But it's my job to read the individual that I'm speaking to and adapt myself to them, with the understanding that at the end of the day, the basic thought is talk to God about man before you talk to man about God. So before I approach anybody, I'm going to pray about it. And then when I approach them, I'm going to do my best. And then I'm going to realize I'm not responsible for results here. I leave that, after I do my part, I leave that to God. I leave that to the Holy Spirit. If they're moved, great. If they're not, I can look at myself in the mirror and say, well, I did my part. I didn't just sleepwalk through this and do nothing. I did my part. But after that, I can't do any more.
Right. So who is your intended audience for this book?
Intended audience are ordained and laity that have anything to do with parish management. However, each reader of the book has a different takeaway. So if you're the bishop, for example, you understand what each pastor under you should be doing. If you're the pastor, you're the top of the org chart within your parish, and you are more directly responsible for placing people under you that will take care of all aspects of parish management. If you're the parish business manager reading this book, this is your how-to manual for a lot of things that you will not be finding elsewhere. Information on what to do and how to do it. You won't typically find a lot of the things in this book elsewhere. That's why I wrote it. I know that because I tried the other books and they didn't have what I wanted to have. And if you're laity and you want to volunteer, this book by chapter is specific to you. And you may not need to read the whole book because, for example, hiring and termination of employees is not on your plate. But there's other parts of the book that would be very useful to you, dealing with evangelization and how to get a program started, etc. And you notice in the book, for example, I comment about the mission statement and what it is and how it's useful to the parish business manager. Well, that's typically a collective effort within the parish where the pastor is involved with an advisory council and everybody sits around the table and creates this mission statement. Well, everybody there should read the chapters I wrote concerning the mission statement, what it is, what it's not, where it came from, and how do you craft at least one sentence in the current mission statement that will enhance the work of the parish business manager. How can you do that? I'm not talking about changing everything in the mission statement you already have, but how could you enhance it with a few words that would make the job of the parish business manager much more effective? So that's.
I found it fascinating, just your simple suggestion that somewhere in the mission statement it says we're going to do things well. We're going to do things well.
Yes.
So then when things aren't being done well, you have a leg to stand on to say, hey, it's in our mission statement that this is supposed to be done well. It's being, it's a mediocre at best right now. That's not good enough. Good enough isn't good enough. And if that's in the mission statement, you can point to it and say, we're not living up to this. You're not living up to this. Maybe we need to hire someone who can do a better job because it's in the mission statement.
Yes, and take it out of the mission statement, which it's not there in mission statements right now. Take it out, and you don't have the leverage you just mentioned. And so when you want to go to somebody and coach them up, teach them up, help them, where are you coming from, Mike? Why are you talking to me about this? I don't even understand why you're approaching me. I'm doing the best I can, or I'm doing great. You need this one concept expressed in the mission statement that we are going to deliver superior, at whatever the exact wording are. You can work on it yourself, but the book explains what to say and why, and you hit upon it. Without it, I'm lost as a pastor or manager when I need to affect change. Anybody can say anything about how well they're doing, and I haven't got anything to stand on. I didn't promise the community I serve anything.
Right.
Well, then, when you don't make that kind of commitment, anything will do. And that's what's going on right now. And it's not right.
So obviously, I mean, there's parishes with priests in them now, and your book can help to bring about change, or as you say, kill what's there and start over and make it, a whole new creature. But stepping back from that, how do we get this into seminaries so that the next generation of priests already know this? Like if I was working, I have to work with my parish priest. I can give him your book, but he's got to figure it out. But what about the young guys that are in seminary right now? Are the seminaries receptive to these ideas of adding them to the curriculum? I mean, I'm not at Holy Apostles anymore. I don't know if it was being taught there.
Well, let me back up for a second. Just one comment you made about killing what's there. I do say that, but it's a very specific comment related to the existing culture. If the existing culture is not right and it's broken in the parish, there's no such thing as change the culture. That never works. That's a misnomer. When it's spoken, we have to change the culture. You can say that, but what you really have to do is you have to kill the existing culture and replace it with a new one. And that's the distinction there. In regards to seminaries, the answer is no, typically not receptive. Why? This seems like common sense. I mean, maybe they don't like your book, but they got to teach parish management and operations, don't they? You'd think so, but what's the problem? The problem is that the seminary curriculum is set and has been set for a long, long time. And there's no room to add anything. Nobody was waiting around for my book or anybody's information on parish management with an open slot in the seminary curriculum in first through fourth or whatever year. It's all filled. And so when you talk about, well, hey, we need to add parish management to the curriculum, that is a zero-sum game, meaning the rector or whoever is going to make this decision has to take something out to put your thing in. And that's a problem. That's a problem, practically speaking, because, what am I taking out? If it was there, it was needed. I wouldn't have put it in there in the first place. So I can't take it out. But even if you decided to take it out, there's another dynamic. And that's the professor who's been there, who may be ordained or maybe lay, but the professor teaching the course that you're thinking about removing, that's not a friendly conversation. They've been there 17 years teaching this class. It's integral to the curriculum. And now you're tapping me on the shoulder saying it's got to go because we're going to replace your course with this other one in parish management. Not really is something that you're going to look forward to, not a conversation you're going to look forward to. So consequently, it's not commonly taught. And when it is taught, I'm going to maintain, obviously I'm biased, but I'm going to maintain that a lot of the principles that I explain in the book are not taught. And people will make an assumption. Parish management, oh yeah, I got that. We need somebody to do the counting. The phones have to be answered. And, we need a parish bulletin that's updated. All of the general pedestrian things. Yeah, I get that. No, you don't have a clue. You don't get it at all. Just read the table of contents in my book and look at it and ask yourself, do I know anything about what this chapter is about? Probably not. And if that's the case, you need to get on it.
So where have you seen successes with the book?
When I have taught it, it was successful. Mundelein Seminary, Holy Apostles College and Seminary. The difficulty is after I wrote the book, I contacted every seminary in the United States, some in Canada, and a couple in Europe. I sent free copies of the book. I wrote a cover letter. I might as well have been mostly talking into a dead phone. Didn't go anywhere. Even when you give them the book, it didn't go anywhere. You do the necessary follow-up. You didn't get a call returned or an email, nothing. And I understand why, because I've talked to people in authority at seminaries, and they explained to me what I just told you. And that's the reason, that's the problem with getting something new included into a curriculum.
Right.
And it's a crisis, though. We are losing people, and we admit that. What are we doing? Well, there are various ministries, many of them worldwide now, that have grown up in the church. Word on Fire, for example. And they're based on evangelization. Okay, but the tip of the spear, where you have a point of contact for the person who's quit and you're trying to bring them back, is the parish. And if that parish is not receptive and run properly, and I'm talking about more than the paychecks arrive on time and the bulletin is sitting in the back of the church on time, I'm talking about way more than that. If that parish is not properly aligned with your evangelization efforts through the internet, when the person actually calls the parish or looks at the parish website, be disappointed. And so what is the point of doing this outreach and wonderful work to bring people into a parish that's dysfunctional, where you might have one shot when they dial that number?
Right.
Whoever answers that phone is the point of contact that they're going to base a decision on to come back into the church and check things out. And that call falls flat. Because that
they say the two main reasons people leave a parish, which I find fascinating, is the homily and the parish secretary. How the homily, and that's, of course, that's my department, is trying to get superior, awesome homilies that reach people's lives. And then the parish secretary, which is there's that point of contact.
Right. And being...
I had a situation many years ago that it was a very difficult situation in my parish with a young woman who had miscarried a baby, and I had to go and get the baby, and it was very difficult. And I now had a baby, a tiny little baby in my freezer, and I needed to get a funeral mass done for the baby, and I couldn't call my priest because it was too close to home. So I called a neighboring parish, and a secretary answered. And you imagine if I was like a Catholic on the edge, because I explained the situation. I need a funeral mass, and I have a dead baby in my freezer. And the response was, "It's not our problem."
Yes, and
it's like, are you serious? Did you not hear me? And that was the response I got. It's and I explained why I didn't want to go to our own parish. It was too difficult a situation. It was not our problem.
Right.
Thanks be to God, I was able to call another parish where I knew another priest, and he did a beautiful funeral mass for us and the baby. And but yeah, can you imagine if I was like on the edge? Yeah. It's like,
so if you're, for example, if your attendance at Mass is aligned with the quality of the homily, we failed you in catechesis, because the Eucharist is the source and summit of our faith. But you're aligned with the 15 minutes of homily, and if you don't like it, you'll even quit. Okay, we failed you there. But these calls, these services provided, or the lack thereof, how to relate to people who call in or email in, that's a parish management and operations issue. That's a training issue.
It is.
These questions can start, just the front end of the questions of the caller start as yours. I have a situation, or do you have? And you can't offer what you don't have, but are we reflecting on why we don't have certain offerings that we should? Just looking at it on a level playing field, I collected all of the bulletins for all of the churches in Orange County and LA County. They're all printed by the same company. It was no problem to do. They shipped me a bulletin from every church, and I went through them all to help lay out a new format with new content in the bulletin where I was. Why did I find such drastic variations when we're all trying to reach the same people and we should all offer certain core outreach ministries? Well, there's reasons we don't have enough people, we don't have enough volunteers, but the ultimate reason is, we just don't do that here. We don't offer that here. And I'm always reminded of this cartoon I have of a caveman standing behind a sales table, and he's selling square wheels. And another caveman walks up with a round wheel, and the caveman selling square wheels says, "That's not how we do things here." Okay, well, that's what we're facing here. And you need to unbreak this logjam. You need to unstick it. The best I can do is teach a course if I'm allowed to, and write a book that can go anywhere. And the book can reach the right person. If it does, they'll read it. And if they read it, I hope the light goes on and they realize I did not really understand the full scope of parish management. I now see it is much more than the basic services, that the landscaping is nice, the roof leaks, oh, we got to fix that. That's minor detail compared to the rest of what parish management could and should entail.
Right. One of the things I find lacking in many churches now is just outreach to young people. I mean, we have this generation of young people that we've lost.
Yeah.
They're not coming to Mass. They do their confirmation and then they're gone. Sometimes they come back for marriage and, baptism of children, but sometimes they don't.
Right.
It's a tough culture right now. So we can see that this outreach, parish outreach to the unchurched or the people that have left is so important. And that, as you're saying, it has to be superior. It has to be really good. It has to be done well with with people with good leadership qualities. How do we get those people with the leadership qualities to step up to the plate? I mean, they're there in parishes. Sometimes, like I say, I think they're afraid to step forward. They're afraid of stepping on somebody's toes. I mean, when I finally took over the decorating the flowers for the liturgical year, there was this transition of stepping on somebody's toes for a little bit of time that wasn't doing the job.
Yes.
And finally stepping in and saying, look, I'm willing to do it. To kind of nicely say, trying to push somebody who wasn't doing the job out of the way. So that can be uncomfortable for people.
Well, the two aspects to your question, finding a leader and then replacing the person who is in the position that's really not doing the job well. Finding a leader, if you pray first, God will provide. If you pray persistently, God will send you somebody. Now, that person that is sent may at first glance not appear to you or whoever's talking to them to have the attributes of a leader. But don't necessarily believe that, because as you mentioned at the front end and what I explain in the book is leadership is a gift. The gift comes from God, but sometimes it has to be revealed. And sometimes it's only revealed by actually putting the person in the position where leadership is required, and then they flourish and they actually lead, and they're actually leading in a manner they never thought they could. And they had their own self-doubts, but those self-doubts were removed because in the job, they were actually doing an excellent job. But at first glance, nothing in their background, nothing in their job history, nothing in their career trajectory showed any signs of leadership. That does not mean they're not a leader. We have to reveal that. So you have to look at people who come to you with that light. And if you're praying, God knows we need these leaders in positions, and that'll happen. In terms of replacing somebody who's already in a position, that's the job of the pastor. And that's where certain aspects that I talk about how to find the right person, how to interview, how to go about moving somebody to a different position or, unfortunately, termination. That's an art and a science. And by authority, it's either the pastor or whoever the pastor delegates that job to. But no matter who it is, they have to have certain skills and certain knowledge to be able to, in charity and in Christian love, explain to a person that they're probably better off in another volunteer position or in another job entirely. And that's not a bad thing. Who are we to say that we are not the messenger to deliver that message so the person could be in a position where God actually wants them to be? And when they move into that other position, they flourish, and whoever they're serving is served much better. But there's this natural tendency to pull away from these unpleasant conversations that can actually sometimes turn confrontational because the person doesn't like the message that you're delivering to them, no matter how kindly and lovingly you deliver that message. Okay, but what am I to do? Am I to be paralyzed because the job I'm supposed to do has an uncomfortable dimension to it? So Betty has been in the parish secretary job for 24 years, doing it poorly and is not receptive to training. And I'm paralyzed from moving Betty to a different position or letting Betty go, find another job with all of the proper considerations of Betty's life and the situation she's in. Notwithstanding that, I'm not going to be holding all of what the parish could and should do well and in a superior manner held hostage by one employee who's in the wrong place. I have a duty, and my duty is to serve everybody. I can't let that barrier hold me back.
And we find that human situation all over the place. I mean, we find it in schools with the teacher that doesn't get fired when they should. We see it in families where somebody's ruling the roost who shouldn't be, and we see it in parishes. And some of it is this desire of, I don't want to hurt this person.
Correct.
But like you're saying, I'm not hurting this person at the expense of a lot of people being hurt.
Yes. And I also believe that at times I'm the messenger and this person should be someplace else doing something else, but they're never going to get to that spot if somebody doesn't talk to them about moving on. And that's just like, oh no, that can't be. Yes, it can. Seen it happen. People flourish going down the road, doing something else. Yeah, it can happen.
Yeah, and that's really trusting in the grace, like you're saying, that, the Holy Spirit will take care of the situation if you're doing it kindly and lovingly and with the right motives.
Right.
Even though the message might be very difficult.
Right. If I don't deliver the message in my capacity as the parish business manager, for example, or the pastor, who will? Am I going to expect some interlocution that will fall upon this person and they'll hear a voice and somehow figure it out and realize God has spoke to them and they should leave? Not likely. No. More likely is God will use us who are in alignment with his will to pass a message on. And that's what I have to do. And I do not enjoy certain aspects of my duty. But when I context things as duty, I do them.
Right, right. So when you have these situations in a parish, at this point in time, if it's not coming from the top down, how do you suggest people that are leaders in the parish approach the ordained person, the pastor? With these ideas, especially, we have pastors that are just not leaders. We know that. That's part of the problem. That not only are they not trained administrators, they are also just not leaders. But there are people in the parish who are aware of this, who are leaders. How do they engage the pastor to change this to switch, this culture of sort of mediocrity, everything's good enough, we're running all right, to we want to be something like amazing. We want to do it really well. How do you approach the pastor who's not on board?
Right. There are two aspects here. approaching the pastor, how do you do that? And what does that entail? The pastor, you're quite right. Some of them are not leaders, but they're pastors. Fine. I have to persuade the pastor that I'm not asking them to do more themselves. I'm not asking them to spend more hours at work. They're already exhausted and tired. I'm there to help them. They don't see it that way. I have to explain, I'm not here to add more work to your plate. I'm here to give you more time to do what I can't. You're ordained. I'm not. You have faculties. I don't. I want you to spend all your time, as much as possible, using the faculties that you receive through your ordination that laity cannot do. So the next part of this discussion is explaining that delegation is necessary. And the reason pastors do not delegate is because they're quite right in knowing and believing, hey, dude, if something blows up, it's on me. If there's a problem, it's on me. And therefore, I am not going to delegate. And one of two things happen. Nothing gets done because they don't have the people to do it, or they try and micromanage, which only adds more pressure to them because they're trying to do everything and be everywhere and watch everything, and that's impossible. So ultimately, I'm trying to explain to the pastor that delegation is necessary. If you find through interviewing, which is explain what type of person we're looking for and how to go about finding that person. If you appoint somebody who can do those things on your behalf, then you're going to be able to provide these outreach services and provide better parish management. And you're not going to add a significant amount of time to your day because you have a qualified person that's handling this in your parish. And that sounds wonderful. That sounds utopian, Mike. But where do I find this person that I can delegate to? Well, you interview. This is the business principles put inside of a parish. Don't you think, Father, that I have the same problem finding qualified people that I can delegate to in my company? Of course I do. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. You have to sift through people. Take some time. What I'm talking about, though, is a front-loaded situation where you invest the time at the front end to build out your operation, your organization on the parish management side. And once you invest in that front end of getting qualified people into your organization, into parish management, into the volunteer ranks, you're good. You're set. And when the bishop says, Father, I'm going to assign you to a different parish come next September, you are leaving a well-run, enhanced, superior parish to the person coming in. Not just mediocrity. This is what we've always done. This is the way we've always done it type of operation. Right. And again, I come back to the point that the parish is the tip of the spear where people contact. And if that is not offering something, they will not contact you. They will look at the website and see what's there. And they're looking for something that's not there. They're not returning to you. And then when they do contact you, how are they treated? Are they like your example where, oh, we don't have that. Sorry, that's not our problem. No, that's so anyway, that's what you have to do. And then I'll add at the end of the day, if the pastor says, take a hike, thanks for your input. I'm not changing anything. The way it's run now, I'm fine with it. Well, you're stuck because unlike the Protestant church, we don't elect our pastors. We don't hire our pastors. They are given to us by the bishop, and it is what it is. And in God's plan, sometimes we end up having to say, when things are like obviously broken and not doing right, we have to sometimes say, well, it's a mystery. So why would a pastor be in place and stay in place that doesn't expand their parish management and operations? I don't know. All I know is that's the way it is. And I have to just grind my teeth and not quit on my faith because I'm not there for the man. I'm there for Christ and the Eucharist and the sacraments. And this man is an administrator and he's not a very good one. but that's no reason to quit.
Right. So you're out in Los Angeles area?
Orange County.
Okay, so you're in really big parishes you're connected to.
Yes.
I'm a little country bumpkin out here in Rhode Island, little tiny parishes that have, 200 families. Our biggest parish, I think, in the state maybe has 2,000. But I'm surrounded and connected with little country bumpkin parishes. But the needs of people tend to be similar, I find. What, in your experience, have been the types of outreaches that are necessary? That, we have a small parish. We have very little outreach. We have St. Vincent de Paul. I'm very involved in pro-life activities, but not at my parish. And it does not have a pro-life outreach, except for the little that I do connected to something else. We don't have a youth ministry. That kind of went by the wayside many years ago, I believe. We have CCD, religious education, but, it begins and ends on Sunday morning. So what kind of things have you seen that parishes should have?
A coordinated effort to serve the elderly and, of course, bring them the Eucharist. But beyond that, there's much more you can do in the service of the elderly if the institution where you visit would permit it. And you can sponsor an event, you can have a small party, you can think creatively, you can have a guest speaker, you can have an artist, you can have a pet, you can have a trained escort pet, a dog come in. There's many things you could do there. So that's one thing. Divorce that I mentioned earlier is very important, that people who have been divorced and are struggling and they think they understand the teaching of the church, but maybe they don't. And in any case, they simply need local support. That's important. NA and AA and focus there is important. The poor are with us everywhere. What is done to help serve the poor in the local community, regardless of size? We can do something. What are we doing? There's retreats that can be offered in the parish, regardless of size. Are there retreats offered? Who coordinates the retreats? Who finds the speakers that fit the community that we have? Who helps form and choose the topic that will be a part of that retreat? How frequently do we offer these retreats? You can do that regardless of the size of the parish. The speaker knows that it's a small parish. They're not expecting an auditorium full of people. But does that mean, well, it's a small parish, we don't offer retreats here because it's small? No, they're people. They need that retreat. So who's going to make it happen? Who's going to find the speaker? Where's the money going to come from to pay the speaker or any materials that we distribute? If I'm proactive in the parish and I have this attitude and I have this in my job description that evangelization is a part of my role, just put me in the chair and give me that authority and I'll free think it. Of course, I'll run everything by the pastor. I'm not a loose cannon. I'm not going to do anything without permission, but I'm going to present ideas and ideas and ideas. I'm going to canvass what other churches do. I'm going to grab ideas that I think will fit. And I'm going to try them in my parish. Size related, of course, but I'm going to try them in my parish. It's just what we have now is flat. There is no thinking like that in most parishes. It's flat. It's what you see right now is what you get. And if you call to ask us about something you don't see, we're going to tell you we don't have that. And we're not going to take the idea that you called about something we don't have and run it up to the pastor and say, Father, why don't we offer whatever? No. Right. My training is to say, no, we don't have that, and hang up the phone or respond to the email. I'm sorry, we don't have that. Well, that's a training issue. That is a culture issue. That should be fixed. Who's going to do it? Pastor's overwhelmed. I got no time for that. Don't you understand, Mike? I barely get any time to sleep. I'm working 6 days a week. Come on, dude. Yeah, I know that. That's why laity are here. And you can find qualified people. You're looking at one who just bumbled on in And they said, "Oh, you got enough background. I think I can trust you in this position." Yeah, okay, sure. Pay? No, I don't even need to be paid. Really? So you're working for nothing with qualifications to do the job. You're taking this off my plate. So that proves that God will provide, but not if you're not looking. Not if somebody comes by and you're just like, "Well, I'm not delegating. I don't care. I don't care who comes in. I don't care how qualified they are. There's no way that I'm taking that risk. I don't want to do that. Thank you very much. See you." And so nothing changes. Meanwhile, we're driving people to make the phone calls into the parish. We're driving them to visit the parish. We're driving them to check the website. And what did they find? The same thing they found 30 years ago that caused them to quit in the first place. It's not what's there. It's what's not there that's keeping people away. They want things that aren't being offered. And there's nobody within the parish to sit back and say, "We got to do better here. We have things we should do that we're not doing." The pastor can't do it. The assisting priest can't do it. They're maxed out busy. I get that. Laity, hello, laity, we're here.
I mean, I don't know how many times I've said to someone who, both in life, regular life, family life, community life, or the church life, who, they complain that X doesn't exist. X doesn't exist. They wish X existed, but X doesn't exist. And I look at them and say, well, if you want X to exist, why don't you create X? And that's a novel idea to people. Oh, I wish there was a book club. Well, create a book club. Oh, I wish there was, a mother's group create it. Call the library and create it, And people look at me like I have three heads.
Right, because that's not going to happen through them. That has to be.
I think it's because they don't even think in those, like you're saying, in those terms of it's courage. Maybe it's a lack of courage, a lack of the virtue of courage, and I don't know what. But the idea that people forget that they can be creative, that they can invent something new, or if they know there's a need, they can make it happen.
Even when they think of it, they stymie themselves because they say, "Well, I can't do that. I'm too busy. I don't have the skills. I don't know how, what have you." That's okay. Their temperament and their background is not aligned with leadership. I need to realize we need a book group or whatever the case may be as the pastor, or really the person they delegated to as the parish business manager. I need to see that. And titles, if you don't want to use a parish business manager title, pick any title you want. But somebody within the parish is responsible for looking at what's not there and finding somebody to lead it and carry that forward until the job is filled. I understand to spontaneously mention to somebody, "Well, if you want that type of ministry, you should just create it yourself." That's pretty much a non-starter. I need somebody to find the person, and they may have to search for weeks or months to fill that slot. But I need to have a box on the org chart where I can place that duty to find somebody to lead that ministry, and then it will get done. Right now, that box doesn't exist. And if it exists, it's vacant. And if it's not vacant, the person doesn't even know that their duty goes beyond making sure the Christmas trees get put up at Christmas time and the door that doesn't swing properly and has a squeaky hinge gets oiled. I think that's their job. And it's more than that.
So we never know who's going to watch these interviews, but I'm sure there will be people watching this interview who know in their hearts that they are a leader. They are a leader. They're not stepping up to the plate yet, but they are a leader. What do we want to say to that person who's watching this interview, who deep in their heart knows they've got it in them to be a leader?
This is self-serving. This is self-serving answer to your question, but I would say to that person to read this book and then go immediately set an appointment with the pastor with 2 books in hand, your copy and one you bought for them, and ask them in prayer to please read this, that you'd like to volunteer, that you'd like to be more active in the management of these functions in the parish. You have the time and you have the skill set to do so. And then follow up with the pastor and see where you go. If you pray about it first and you give it to God, what happens after that, that's up to God.
Right.
But that's where the authority to do more in a parish originates from the pastor. Nothing's going to happen if they don't permit it. So the first thing you have to do is realize they didn't learn these things in the seminary. It was not part of the curriculum, whether that's current, more recently ordained men or men that were ordained long ago. They didn't learn this. And it may not be their temperament to take risk, to change the status quo, to adopt new ideas. And it may be they're close to retirement and it's not something they even want to take on because they're going to pass the baton soon and it's just not something they want to do. In spite of all that, you approach them anyway and you try and share a vision with them. And you will form that vision and form these principles if you read the book. Believe me, parish management is not what you think it is alone. It's all the obvious things that we can assume from the title, but it's much more. And that is what the pastor is not seeing, needs to be taught, needs to be explained to the pastor. And then you see if you can persuade them. And you may have one step, baby steps. Maybe the pastor says, okay, I'll let you run with this idea, this one idea. See how you go with it. We need somebody, we need a retreat. We need more retreats. We need a different retreat. You run with that. Go find something that you think will work for our parish and bring it to me. Let's see what happens then. I don't know. They may take baby steps or they may, like with me, they just say, okay, you're the man, get to work. Okay, thank you. I'll get to work. I understand what I need to do. Whatever it is, don't do nothing. Doing nothing isn't going to work. Go see your pastor and talk to the pastor. And the only reason I propose the book is because you will have a better idea of what to say and you'll have something to leave behind that really reinforces what you say. So it's not just your bright idea. There's somebody who's done this before, who's wrote a book, who teaches this stuff. Here's some ideas I'd like for you to prayerfully consider, Father. Thank you for your time.
And I mean, I read the book. I can attest the fact that there was so much in the book that I did not expect to be in there. It's wonderful. Do you have a copy of it handy?
I have one somewhere else.
My copy is electronic. How can people get the book?
En Route Publishing, ENROUTE is one source. Also Amazon, Barnes & Noble. If you just type in my name, Michael A. Brinda, or Michael Brinda, Brinda, it'll pop up on Amazon. If you go in En Route Publishing and look for the book on parish management, you'll find it. I'm kicking myself for not having it here.
That's all right. And the title is Parish Management and Operations. The Buck Stops Here. And yes. That's Michael Brinda, Brinda.
Yes.
So highly recommend it. Hope it gets out there. Would love to see it in the seminaries. Can see how extremely important it is that we have a new culture that, reaches for, something very superior rather than this is how we've always done it. Or things are good enough.
Let me ask you, though, you mentioned I read the book and there was so much in it that I did not expect to be there. Why is that? Why was there so much in there that you did not expect to be there?
Well, I don't usually find people that think like I think. So, I could tell. That's why when I emailed you, I said, I'm a leader. You're obviously a leader as well. I think people that are leaders and have really tapped into their leadership ability do see things differently. But we don't find it. Like you said, you wrote the book because you couldn't find it anywhere else.
Right.
So for me, it was very refreshing to see ideas that I've used in places where I've needed to use my leadership abilities, even in simple things. Like I said, like I decorate the church. I also run a pregnancy agency, where I've just had to take charge. For instance, I was asked after many years to come back and revamp the pregnancy agency. I'd been there for 20 years, and then I left for personal reasons about 15 years ago. And then during the pandemic, the agency had fallen apart, and somebody got hold of my name and they called me and basically asked me to come back in and help them get it restarted. And they had a committee, that had been working for 3 years, unable to revamp the thing. And long story short, I basically, in no uncertain terms, said, I will come back and I will restart the engine for you guys and get everything done that needs to be done, but I won't work with you. You disband the committee and I will get everything running again, and then I will, get the organization back. But I won't work with a committee that's not working. And they were quite shocked by that, but they accepted it and they disbanded the committee, and I put everything back together, and we're in the process of getting this organization up and running again. But it was that thing of I had to kill the culture. And most people don't think like that. So it was so for me, your book was a breath of fresh air. So there were many things in it that I didn't expect to find. But, obviously great minds think alike. So it was fun. It was fun to read the book and, see you be like off with their heads because this isn't working. And,
Well, I would say for leader to leader, that's what you will see in the book somewhat, but others, it's the title. That's the problem. If I could have thought of a different name that expressed what I was talking about, I would have given it to the book. But that is what the book is about. However, people assume, oh yeah, I got that. Sure, I understand parish management, and they assume all the stereotypes that's all parish management entails, and that's the problem with getting traction for the book.
I always tell people I wanted to name my book Home for the Homily. I wanted to call it the Badass Homily, and and I would have called it Badass Parish Management.
Right. Well, anyway, it's that misunderstanding of what fully parish management and operations entails, what it encompasses, that causes people to just move away and say, well, I got that covered already. Just listening to this hour, I think people can pick up on the fact there's more to parish management than I might have thought. I might want to take a look at that. And the book is also available on Apple Podcasts. So you've got nothing to do. Just put on the earplug, iPod things, and just have a listen. And if it's not catching with you, fine. It doesn't fit. But I think almost all the book, you're going to hear things you never thought of that way, never heard before.
Thank you. Well, Mike, you're also very involved in prison ministry. And we're running out of time for this interview, but I would love to, could you give us just a little information on your prison ministry? And yeah.
Sure. I'm involved in prison ministry on sort of two parallel tracks. I go to Ironwood Prison, which is near Blythe in California. And one part of that is with an organization called Kairos, and that's an ecumenical ministry. And Kairos is patterned after Cursillo. So if you've heard of Cursillo, we provide the same Thursday through Sunday retreat twice a year. And we have a third Tuesday of every month reunion inside the prison. The other thing I do is, separate from that, I teach RCIA to inmates that are either interested in the Catholic Church or they already are Catholic, but they really don't know anything about their faith. And I did that in person for 4 years. The first year I had only 2 students, and the last year I had over 50. Now I do that through the mail, and I buy a Catholic study Bible and the catechism for the inmate, and I have all the lessons, and we go back and forth through the mail, and they send me the answers to the questions, and then I send them the next lesson. At the end of that, of course, if they're already Catholic, great, now they know their faith. And if they were not Catholic, they can elect to enter the church if they want to. And either the bishop will come to the prison, or the bishop will designate the confirmation faculty to a priest that's local, and the person will be baptized if necessary and confirmed, and go hear their first confession and receive their first communion. So those are the basics of what I do there.
Amazing. So is there another book in the works?
The answer is no. Do I have more to say on the topic of parish management? Yes. But I'm not satisfied with the penetration and the adoption of the book I wrote, which doesn't lead me to be highly motivated to write another one. I'm not going to write another one until I can find some greater traction for what I had to say already. If I can do that, then I'll pick up where I left off in that book and move on with deeper concepts and principles. But I need to see more acceptance of what I already wrote before I'm going to decide to write something else.
Okay. Well, I wish you great luck. I wish the church great luck with your book, because what you offer is really important, very important.
Thank you. You're reading the book and endorsing the book as you did. It means a lot to me. I hope people, through your comments and the respect they have for you, give it a try, just on the basis of your comments. They say, well, if Kiki has read it and says it's okay, I'll give it a try.
Give it a try. Please give it a try, because your book is easy to read. Your writing style is easy. You write like you speak very clearly, just great ideas, well organized. And so I wish you great luck with it.
Thank you. Thank you.
And because we need it. From little parishes to big parishes. The issues are there, and the outreach is important, and superior service, that we can't afford to be a mediocre church. If we are lukewarm, we will get spit out. And it's important to, and rightly so. And so we can't be this lukewarm, mediocre, good at, it runs good enough. Right. We've got to be awesome, and while you say, we're not in competition with the Protestant churches, in some sense, we're in competition with a lot of things. We're in competition with a culture of death. Yes. We're in competition with ecclesial communities that don't have the fullness of the truth. And people's lives get hurt and lost when they leave the church. Yes. Things run amok. And so it's vitally important that parishes run well, not just that they run, but that they run well. And your book offers, the means for that to happen, if people are willing to step up to the plate, both, as you say, with administrative abilities and leadership abilities, and with working with the clerical people that we work with, that's important. So thank you.
All right. Thank you for the time. Thank you.
Can you end us with a prayer, Mike?
Certainly. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Dear Lord, please bless this interview and let it travel far and wide where you wish it to go, and upon whose ears you wish it to be heard. We conclude with Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Thank you.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.